What's up guys, Milsim Survivalist. Today we are breaking down the rucksack. I know a lot of you guys want to go out there and spend $500 on a rucksack before even getting in the field, but I'm here today to tell you, go on Amazon, get something cheap, and get out there and start rucking. That's how you build strength, that's how you build the knowledge. Today I'm going to break down my rucksack from tip to butt, as we do in the Milsim community. If you're getting into rucking, the first thing you want to know is that it's going to be a little bit unpleasant. So the rucksack I'm using is a Marting top 65 liter with an expansion of 10 liters, making it 75 liters if you strap on the side pieces. The newer model also has a different configuration on the back of the rucksack, where instead of having these cross straps, I believe it's a zipper system. The reason I chose this rucksack is twofold. The first is MOLLE. I think the most important thing about rucking, you want to be able to adapt based on the mission, or let's say something goes wrong, you need to change the actual configuration of your loadout. So having the MOLLE system allows me to not only add more things to my rucksack, but also keep them in a moment's notice, so that when I need a carabiner or a pen, I can simply pull it off my MOLLE system and I don't have to go digging through my rucksack. One of my favorite parts of this ruck is the integrated MOLLE system, but also the integrated Rainfly. And what this means is that without packing anything separately, this Rainfly is attached to the ruck. Now, the Rainfly is integral for not just keeping the rain off, but it has a few other purposes. First being that it keeps all of your MOLLE equipment secured. So before we had all of that equipment sticking off the side, now it's covered. It won't get snagged by trees and it won't get loose and fall off. So if you are rucking solo, I do suggest that you always keep the Rainfly on so that your stuff isn't falling out. Now, number two, in the Milsim environment, if you're going to something like Milsim West, you're going to want to have a camouflaged Rainfly, at least something dark green, so that when you're navigating with your ruck, you're not getting spotted by Rus 4. Or NATO for that matter. The other reason that I chose this ruck is the internal frame. It has a robust and metal internal frame that's going to prop up your back and hold a lot of that weight. So rather than you holding the weight, you're holding the frame, and the frame is holding the weight. So that might sound weird, but when you actually are rucking, you'll find that if you have a tightly packed ruck and you are optimizing the layout of your ruck, that you're really going to be feeling all that weight in your traps, and we'll get to that later. Internal frame backpack is a must. If you're not running an internal frame, you're not going to be able to have the load-bearing capacity of this, and especially once you get over 75 liters, 60 liters, there's really no point in trying to go without an internal frame. I want to go over a couple of things that I missed out in the field, one of which is how to pack your ruck and keep it nice and tight. I'm embarrassed because in the beginning of this video you saw me with one of my biggest pet peeves, which is loose straps and uneven straps. Something kind of like this. Now, the reason this is an issue is that when you're actually pushing a lot of weight up a mountain, those imbalances are going to lead to injuries. So what you really want is symmetry. If it's tight on the left, it should be tight on the right. And as I go around my ruck, I don't want any gaps. If you go to an outdoor store, they may suggest that you let the ruck sit back, but for two reasons I'm going to go against that. Number one, we're packing a lot of weight. We're not bringing civilian loads of 20, 30 pounds. We're talking Milsim loads, 50, 60, 70, maybe even 100 pounds if you're a heavy gunner. So we want to be focusing on getting the most out of our space, and that means everything's got to be tight. Now, number two is if you want to have a low profile, then you need to have your ruck very tightly fit so that you can make it through small spaces and you can get through the battlefield. In short, make sure that your ruck is tight and that every strap is nicely fixed so that you don't have loose fittings, and overall you're not going to be sitting there adjusting your ruck throughout the day. Now on the top of the ruck, I keep my essentials, things that I will need in a moment's notice. This usually would be medical or rain gear. Item number one is going to be your Rainfly or your rain jacket, and in my case I have a simple collapsible Amazon piece of rain gear. What's nice about these jackets is that they're compact and lightweight, so I don't have to really worry about bringing an additional jacket. I always have this in case I get cold or wet, and they fold up right back into the pocket. And you can go all out and, you know, spend a lot of money on these, but something cheap that is made of a, you know, a wet resistant material is fine, so long as you also have a Rainfly. And we will talk about the Rainfly system that is built into this Ruck later, but I always carry an extra Rainfly. And this is just an REI Rainfly. It's a 65 liter, and this will actually cover the Ruck from the rain. We fully expanded here. And the reason you want to have an extra is that this can also be used as a shelter. It could be used for your friend's Ruck. It could also be used in a survival situation to preserve heat. So it's just good to have a lot of rain gear when you're going out in the field, because you don't know what Mother Nature will throw at you. So after your rain gear is set, I like to make sure that I have an extensive medical So when we're talking about a rucksack, this is a device that you can live out of. You're basically carrying a house on your back, plus all the survival equipment to keep you alive. Now, medical gear is super important. I bring 2 sets of medical gear. I have your ointments and creams and actual supplements, Advil, antibiotics, stuff like that, super glue, and these are things that you don't want to get wet either, so I keep them separately. Next up, we've got our trauma kit. Now, I separate this from the medical kit because you want to be able to get that trauma equipment on its own immediately. So I have some elastic tape, I have a hydration packet, and then the rest of this is actually rubber banded together, and it's a mixture of bleed stop, gauze, and some band-aids. I kind of create this little wrapped up packet. What's nice about this is that if someone has a severe bleeding issue and you need to get that trauma kit, you rip this thing open, and bam, you get your gauze, and then a second layer of bleed stop, followed by the gauze pads and band-aids. So keeping this stuff in the top of your rucksack ensures that instinctively, it rains, you grab your rain gear. Someone gets hurt, you grab your trauma kit. And it's going to keep you disciplined. Now, I will also upload, after the Ruck video is posted, I will upload a digital diagram showing each zone of the Ruck and exactly what's inside, along with some pictures, because as we get into the rest of this, the placement of items within each zone of the Ruck is critical to keeping that tight form, and that's what's going to help the weight sit easily on your back. So let me repack this. And packing is one of the other most important aspects of rucking. You need to make sure that there's no air in between your, sealed components like these wet, quick deployment wet jackets. You want to suck the air out of those. Same with your med kit. And I would say that if you're going to purchase an external Rainfly, don't get one of these gray ones. Get something green or camouflage, because if you're watching this channel, you're interested in Milsim as well, most likely, and you're not going to bring a light gray cover for your rucksack in the field. So green, brown, those are the better colors for sure. So we'll strap this back up, and nice thing about the morting top is that I don't even use the top MOLLE system, but we have 2 clips here. I could easily mount a sleep system, I could mount a external jacket, or a tarp. You might be wondering, why is there so much empty space on the back of my rucksack? Now, the reason for this is very simple. This is where you mount your assault pack. Or in the case of just backpacking, that might be your light pack. The side of my ruck is where things get interesting. Here I've got a trowel for digging trenches, whether that be for a fire or for waste management. I have a fork and spoon combo. I have some carabiners and then my waters. Now, I always suggest that you pack your waters into the sides of your ruck, and this is for easy access, but also is going to keep it balanced. So I like to keep 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and as far as the water itself, smart water is your friend. When you're in the field, I suggest only bringing plastic water bottles and water bottles that have screwable tops, so that if you do have to go and filter some water, you have a system that's built for that. Whereas if you go in with canteens or thermals, anything like that, you're not going to be able to attach a proper filtration system, and it's going to limit the amount of water you can access in the field. Switching around to the other side, I like to mirror with those carabiners, a different set of carabiners for redundancy, and then I also have a Leatherman and a tactical pen. And this gives me kind of those must-haves in a survival situation, as well as a convenience. Whereas if I do need to add some additional gear, I can clip them onto the carabiners. On the straps of my ruck, I like to keep a simple comms rig. An analog bow fang is going to do a lot of justice in the field just for local comms. You can also tap into local emergency services if you want to listen in and see what how things are progressing. I like to keep some Paracord, and this is actually Texas Bushcraft. Those guys make some pretty nasty stuff, and this Paracord has 5 layers to it. It has a fishing wire, a fire starter, and some other fibers in there that I can't remember. But yeah, you definitely want to have some Paracord in the field. Tourniquet, you can never have too many of these. I like to keep at least 2 on me at all times when I'm in the field. Got one right here. The reason I keep it on my waist is that if you actually need to use a TQ, you're probably going to want it literally on your person or on your pocket. So even going and unzipping something is not great. On the right side, I always keep one of these, and I keep it at arm's reach. This is an electric lighter, and the reason I bring a plasma electric lighter is that this lighter can work in pretty much any condition. Even if it's really windy, you can still get this thing to get a spark. So with my charging system that'll go over inside my ruck, I have an unlimited fire supply. So yeah, always make sure you have multiple forms of starting a fire, and preferably a plasma lighter, in addition to a flint or a spark-based lighter. We're actually going to dive into the ruck now, so we're going to change angles. So, we are back. Finish out our ruck loadout. When we left off, the sides are going to be your primary water sustainment. But on the inside of this ruck, you have a slot, and that's where I keep all of my meals. I keep my actual meals on the right side of the ruck. Mountain House meals are your friend. They double as trash bags when they're done. They're compact, nutritious, and they keep you full. So I like to use Mountain House or other similar brands for my meals. And the cook system I store in the main compartment, which we'll get to. On the left side, I like to keep all my snacks. So beef jerky, gummies, chocolate bars, those kinds of things. And this way, your actual main compartment can be used for the important equipment that you'll need to survive and sustain yourself. And your actual ready-to-eat food and snacks and cookable food is all stored on the outside. All right, let's dig into the ruck itself. Now, in the bottom compartment of your ruck, you want to stick all the stuff you will need the last. The stuff that you need the most, you have at the top. On the bottom of a ruck, your least important items when you're on the trail. This is your sleep system and any other items that you're going to use at base camp. other than your tent. So I like to keep a tent light. This is something that you can get online at your local outdoor store. And these have both a red light and a white light. They hang inside your tent. And this will allow you to just, see what you're doing as you break down for the night. I have a headlamp, and I make sure to get one that is rechargeable using a battery bank. I try to make sure all my kit is running off of rechargeable batteries so that I can sustain myself for a long period of time in the field without going into the battery store. I also like to bring some bug spray, a small thing of poison ivy scrub. This can be a real pain if you don't have, and some sunscreen. A tarp is a must. This is a multi-purpose tarp. I can use this to create a shelter. I can use it under my sleep system. And this here is a down bag, and a down bag is a sleeping bag made only of down feathers from a bird. And I think this is duck feathers, and what that allows is for a really compact bag that's suitable for sub-zero temperatures. Lastly, we've got some accessory items, a inflatable pillow, and an emergency blanket with an extra charger. And we can't forget the trash bag. Remember, always pack out what you pack in. What's up, guys? Quick break from the normal video with Milsim Survivalista, my wife. And she is doing her first baby ruck today with this 15-liter MOLLE platform mini rucksack. She's got her food, some water, and some basic supplies. And if you're getting into this and you're coming from a minimal physical fitness background, or you're just getting into physical fitness, a great opportunity for you to build up a foundation is to start with a little ruck, 15, 20 liters. Try to go on a longer trail, and preferably with more incline. But keeping it light doesn't mean you're out of the fight. So, yeah. Now for the main compartment of our ruck, and this section is a little bit up to you. You're gonna have some extra room to put in stuff that goes beyond the minimum requirements. So in my case, what I did for this trip, I brought none less than a camera case. And this was obviously for the purposes of this video. And this is about 5 pounds of equipment. And you can see by this amount of space, you could easily stow another jacket, another set of clothes, or a drone, something that I generally would bring. So beyond that, I like to always bring this. And this is something that I mentioned earlier in this video, which is a dry electronics case. This could be waterproof or the minimum sealed. And what I put in here is a foam padded case with a multiple output charger. So this is adaptable to pretty much every device you could want to charge out in the field. So you got USB-C, micro USB, and lightning bolt for iPhones. And it's retractable, which I like. So it's compact. And in addition to that, I always bring my solar bank. And this is so that I have a continuous source of power for all my devices. I can charge my phone, my camera, my drone. I can even recharge other batteries with this battery. So all in all, a must-have. And then lastly, in this little case, I do keep a micro USB to USB reader. It also functions as a USB reader for a traditional laptop. This is great. So if you are in the field, you have a device that you can check, plug one of these in. And in fact, I could use this device here to adapt it for many other devices. And I can see how much storage I have left on my drone or on my camera. I can cut some clips so that I can keep filming. Next up, we have an essential piece of kit, which is Hygiene. These little waterproof bags are sealable. They're good for traveling on planes and whatnot. But what I do is I always make sure that I have, at bare minimum, a Sawyer water filter, which isn't necessarily hygiene, but you know, if you're not drinking clean water, you're going to get sick pretty quickly. So always have a Sawyer water filter or equivalent. I have a little thing of deodorant, toothbrush, and some eye drops, because out in the field, you never know what's going to get in your eye, and that can really prevent you from being effective. Now, to keep us nice and well fed, I use your standard backpacking cook system, which consists of a propane fuel source, a stainless steel cook pot, and an ignition system. And these can be reused an unlimited amount of times, pretty much. I mean, at a certain point, your flint will wear out on the spark of the ignition system, but you'll have to replace these once every couple of years. You know, if you go out into the field once a month, this thing will still last you a long time. You can hear I've been using this for at least 2 years. There's still something in there. So as long as you have a good amount of snacks, this will last you a very long time. Next up, we have our compression sack. Now, a compression sack is critical because when you go out on a trip or on a ruck and you have 2 days of clothes, you might want to bring 3 days of clothes if it's a 2-day trip. You might want to bring 5 days of clothes if it's a 3-day trip. You don't know how long you're going to be stuck out in the field. So a compression sack is great because at this current size, you can see there's lots of play. But if I stuff this to the brim, I can yank down on all 4 of these latches and I can compress this. So it'll still fit in my ruck even if I have 5 days of clothes. Must have. Now, for our sleep and protection at night, we're going to be using a straight up backpacking tent. And I think that even if you're getting into this for Milsim, you should get in the habit of rucking with a backpacking tent because, number one, it's a little bit heavier, so it's going to be better training than just bringing a tarp and using sticks. And number two, in the case of high wind, your standard tarp 3-point shelters aren't going to be very sustainable. So having a reinforced tent with an actual aluminum frame is going to be much more resilient to wind. And as all backpacking tents come standard, you should get a Rainfly for your tent so that if it does rain, all the rain will simply pour off the sides of your tent. And you might be seeing a lot of orange for a Milsim channel, and the reason for that is safety. If you're out in the field and you're training and you get lost, orange is your friend because simply cutting up this little compression sack and making some tarps, I can flag down planes, I can flag down other civilians. So even if you're training for Milsim purposes, pack some orange with you. Lastly, something that, depending on where you're rucking, is going to be very important, which is a water bag or a bear bag. Now, a common thing that people will use while they're backpacking or rucking are walking sticks. Now, while these can be useful for backpackers, this is Milsim. You're going to be carrying your rifle, your LMG, your grenadier platform. So, drop the sticks at home, boys and girls. Now, keep in mind, if you don't get out there and ruck with all the equipment you plan to use, everything in this video is a waste of time. If you just pack your ruck and leave it and don't ruck, well, what the fuck? Seriously though, get out there and ruck once a week. I think once a week rucking is important because it gets you in the rhythm of having this kind of weight on your back. Today we're wrapping up an 8-mile trail and I feel great after a couple of years of training, and I think that this is a very achievable standard. So get out there and keep rucking. On the topic of rucksacks, you can spend a lot of money on a ruck. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said just go to Amazon, and I'm being honest. Go to Amazon, Walmart, get something light and cheap, because you may go on your first ruck and find, hey, this isn't for me, so why waste the money? Before we wrap up the video, there are a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to address. Number one, do your own research. This video is merely a basis of understanding, and before you go out and do something stupid, make sure to do your own research and practice with something local and easy. I like to always start with a trail in an area that you know and a place that you're comfortable with so that if something does go wrong, you're not going to get psyched out and never do it again. Secondly, there are many ways to do this. Many ways to pack a ruck, many ways to design a loadout
for that ruck in a survival situation or a Milsim situation. So if you have great ideas or you disagree with what I have to say, please let me know in the comments. I'd like to have an open discussion on rucksacks, rucking for survival purposes, and rucking for Milsim purposes. Lastly, this is the first video on the Milsim Survivalist channel. I'd like this to be a positive place for people to come and find information, get excited about the topic, and also help each other learn. War is bad, but people are good, so get out there and do something positive. Throw someone a compliment. Help someone build out their loadout. People are getting into this community for the first time. They don't want to be pushed off by guys who think they know everything, so be open to letting new people into this community. I'm Milsim Survivalist. Thank you for watching until the end. We'll see you in the next one.